Hey Hub City Church, thank you so much for welcoming us into your home today or wherever you're at. I just want to start by saying I miss you all so much and hope you're doing well.
We want to see more faces and hear more stories, so we have a video from some people in our church. Let's check it out.
I'm one of the walking hens. We've been walking for 20 plus years. This group has saved my life. It's been a great blessing and a great stress reliever during this difficult time. It has been a blessing to see each of these gals and walk daily.
I think it's just shown me how important community is. Being able to share in person and connect, and it's life-giving.
I agree with both Sheila and Patty that just being able to get together during the week and see each other, that's so important, to see a real body and not via technology, and just have our contact, our social contact that we're just so familiar with all these years, and to be able to share. And this group just blesses me just so much. It's so important, and they're all my sisters in Christ, and that we uplift each other and support each other, and just, yeah, it's been a lifesaver for me.
And I, of course, agree with everything these girls have said, and I just, throughout our lives, there's been different crises, and as they happen, we're here for each other. So going through this time, it's just a continuation of it.
Next week, we're going to start a new series called Pursuit. For 2020, our word was pursuit. The first pursuit that we did was pursuit of prayer, and this next pursuit is going to be pursuing reading our Bibles. We're going to have tons of resources for adults and for kids for getting into the Word. Next Saturday, we're going to have an opportunity to say hi, but also to get these resources into your hands. If you have a physical need, we want to help you and serve the church. You can always visit the homepage on our website and click the button, I have a need. After that, we'll be in touch. As we look towards reopening, we value your perspective and would love if you would take our quick survey to share your thoughts with us. You can find our survey on our website. We're finishing up our For Crying Out Loud series today, talking about Mary and Martha. Take it away, Pastor Sean.
Well, hey, Hub City, it's good to be with you today. And today we are concluding our series For Crying Out Loud, looking at all these little stories in the Bible of people that have emotional moments, and how do you engage your faith with your emotions. And so, as we start today, I want to just talk about plans for a moment. How many of us are the planners in our lives, right? I don't know why I'm raising my hand, because I am not the planner. My wife is the planner. She's the one that loves the plan, makes a plan, lives by the plan, right? You know people like this, and they love a plan. What is it about having a plan that people like, right? I had to ask my wife about it. She said it's the idea that you anticipate and visualize results, and then you see it come to fruition. Right? There's an expectation, there's anticipation, there's a sense of predictability or comfort in that. Maybe an element of control, because you can control that outcome even. That's why we like having plans. And we kind of feel like the A-team, like, I love it when a plan comes together. Right? Any A-team fans out there? Yeah, you know you are. Right? You love it when a plan comes together. But the thing about plans is plans change, don't they? Plans never go as planned. You could tweet that. Plans never go as planned. I'll give you an example. Our first Christmas with Evie, she was just short of a year, and here we are, young parents, so excited. We got our Christmas pajamas, we got our Christmas presents. We're going to have these traditions we're going to start with our daughter, and it's so exciting, right? And that first Christmas, we wake up, and plans change, because little Evie got sick. And so she got a little bit of a fever, and then she's opening that first present, and she spits up. Like, okay, we clean this thing up, right? And then it doesn't stop there, and it just continues to come out. And this little tiny little baby just throwing up everywhere is still cute, but haunting in my dreams for that Christmas moment. And you begin to see all of these plans that we had go out the window. And we had plans, and so we still tried to stick with them. We went down and drove 2 hours to go visit April's family, to be with her family, and we were going to take some time off and be together and just make memories and Christmas and all of that. And we get down there, and like, nope, plans changed even more because by the time April and I got down there, we felt sick. And so we go and just crash on her parents' bed for a little bit. We don't feel well. We're there for a couple of hours, and we barely even saw anybody, right? What a great plan. And so we finally like, I am so sorry. Merry Christmas. We got to go home. We drive home. We make the 2-hour drive back. You have not lived until you have thrown up in a trash bag at 60 miles an hour. Just a little side note to that story. We get home, and that first Christmas with our daughter was spent on the kitchen floor, just with my hot, feverish face pressed up against the cold tile saying, babe, I can't get up. I am so comfortable right here. I can't move. This is Merry Christmas. Right? Plans change. That's the thing about plans. The moment you set them, the moment they change, and they don't work out. Well, what happens when plans change? We begin to feel all kinds of different things. An anxiety, a worry, a doubt, an insecurity, stress, chaos. All kinds of different emotions are provoked when plans change. And we're going to look at a story today of a couple of ladies where their plan changed. We're going to look at Mary and Martha, who are two sisters, and they got this brother named Lazarus. And Lazarus gets sick. And their whole plan is, well, our brother Lazarus is sick. Let's go get Jesus. And if we bring Jesus into the situation, he'll heal our brother and everything will be better. Like on paper, great plan, right? Just bring Jesus into the situation, it gets better. Unfortunately, Jesus didn't show up like they planned. Jesus didn't show up until 4 days later after he's been dead for 4 days and buried for 4 days. Like plans changed. And so we're going to look at Mary and Martha's story, and I want you to look as we read this, where is the intersection of faith and feelings? Where is their faith in the midst of this? And what are they feeling in the midst of all of this that's happening? As their plans change, they feel uncertainty, they feel unpredictability, and they feel out of control. Now today, as we look at this text in John chapter 11, it's not going to be me telling it. We've got somebody from the church. We're going to look at John chapter 11, verse 17 is where we're going to start. Let's throw it to him. Here we go.
Hi, Up City. My name's Chloe.
I'm Brandon.
And we really miss seeing you guys on Sundays. We're really glad that we get to be with you today. Sean has asked us to read some verses.
On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them with the loss of their brother. When Martha had heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet them, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask.
Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world. And after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but this was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her were also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying?
Well, thanks, Brandon and Chloe. We'll check in with you later as we conclude the story together. Now, as we look at this passage, that moment of faith and feelings, the biggest takeaway that we see here right out of the gate is that faith is tested in the uncontrollable. Faith is tested in the uncontrollable. What do I mean by uncontrollable? It's those uncontrollable moments, those situations in this story where Mary and Martha didn't have control of all of the variables, right? Lazarus gets sick. That's out of their control. Jesus doesn't show up. Out of their control. Lazarus dies. Out of their control. when Jesus does finally show up, 4 days later, out of their control. But as you're looking at this, you even see their struggle for control, because even when Jesus does show up, both sisters at different times say the same thing to Jesus. In verse 21 and verse 32, both sisters say this statement, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." What does that show us? It shows that they had put all of their trust into Jesus is going to show up and he's going to take care of this. Like they had this reassurance as they're holding Lazarus' hand in bed and he's sick, just thinking, Jesus is going to walk through that door anytime and he's going to heal my bro. Like, we're good. And then it goes off script. It doesn't go as planned. And you begin to see them wrestling with this question, Jesus, where were you? Where are you in this situation? Why didn't you show up earlier? I had this plan for you, Jesus, and if you had stuck to my plan, all of this would have been figured out. And to make matters worse, you have this crowd of people. We see this in verse 37. Crowds of people are there mourning with Mary and Martha and supporting them and crying with them. And they see Jesus come onto the scene, and they even ask the same question to themselves, like, isn't that the guy that could heal the blind? Well, surely he could have healed Lazarus. So just continuing to feed this moment, and not to mention all of this uncertainty and this confusion, and then you have the emotion. Think about what Mary and Martha are feeling in this moment. They've lost their brother. They deeply care for their brother. They deeply love their brother, and they are suffering a loss in their family. And so what happens in a moment of loss? There's grief and sadness and mourning and reflection and regret sometimes of, oh, I wish we could have done this and I wish we could have done that. And there's extreme sadness, and then you couple that with the anxiety and the uncertainty and the depression that comes with all of the circumstances and all the variables at play. And I wonder how many of us can relate to Mary and Martha in this moment, where you've looked at your life and this season of life that you're in, and you've experienced some sort of a loss. Maybe it wasn't the loss of a loved one, maybe it was, but maybe it's a different kind of loss, a loss of a job or a loss of finances, a loss of predictability, a loss of something, right? We're mourning some sort of change and disruption. You fill in that blank for yourself. And we expected, well, Jesus will just show up and he'll fix this. I prayed about this. I asked Jesus to come along in this, and yet there's what seems like silence, uncertainty. And we're living in this time of uncertainty, of not knowing when the future is going to change, not knowing where the light at the end of the tunnel is going to get closer and say, gosh, we're going to get through this because, well, we don't know. There's no predictability in this season right now, and that just continues to bring unrest within our soul and this anxiety and this stress, and we just continue to want to cry out to Jesus and say, Jesus, where are you? Why aren't you showing up in this situation? My family needs you. My household needs you. My community needs you. My world needs you. I need you. Where are you, Jesus? And yet it is in these uncontrollable moments that Mary and Martha's faith is made visible and it is put to the test. They still trust in Jesus even in this moment of uncertainty and unpredictability and unknown. It feels uncontrollable, and yet they have this trust in his lordship. They call him Lord. They call him teacher. They refer to him with such an authority in their life that when he walked into their sphere, man, he had their trust. He didn't go as planned, but he still had their trust, and you see that in the way that they talk to them. In verse 22, she even says, man, Jesus, I knew if you would have shown up, we could have fixed this. You could have fixed this. But what does she say? I know that God will give you whatever you ask. You see this faith in her response. Even in this teaching moment that shortly comes right after that, Jesus begins to teach her and explain to her that he has authority over all of death, not just Lazarus' death, but like all of death. When he says, I am the resurrection and the life, like this classic verse, I am the resurrection and the life, as Jesus says. And what happens is he's beginning to ask her these questions, like, do you believe that? Do you believe that I have authority over all of death, all of sin, all of that power? And you see her kind of wrestling with this, and she's, yes, I believe. And as you read the story further, you see that maybe she didn't fully comprehend the full context of what he was talking about, and she's going to still grapple with the context, the comprehension, what the magnitude of that moment. I think seeing Martha's struggle in all of this and having this teachable moment with Jesus where he wants to teach our faith and expand our faith and grow our faith in these uncontrollable moments. And yet, Martha didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what was going to happen next, but she still trusted that he would have the answers to her questions, that he could figure it out in the midst of that. And that's what a life of faith really is. A life of faith in these uncontrollable moments that we may be feeling right now is this great reminder to us that faith is not having all of the answers. Faith is not having it all figured out. Faith is not gutting it out because you can see the progress and movement. I would illustrate it like this. I like to bike ride. It's a way that I like to exercise and get out and go be with my family now. And one of the things that I use this app on my phone, and it tells me the distance that I've ridden, the time that's elapsed, the speed in which I'm riding. And seeing that information helps me progress, right? Helps me speed up, helps me get through times where maybe there's an incline or a hill, helps me push, right? Athletics is highly a mental activity, right? What do they say? It's 20% physical and 90% mental. Like, it's just, that's how athletics works. You'll get it later on. But when I don't have that app working, when I don't see the distance ridden, I don't see my time, I don't see my speed, what I notice is I actually ride slower. I take more time in my rides. I ride a shorter distance. I am less motivated because I can't see that progress. I can't see the movement in which I'm going. And I think a lot of us feel the same way or could see the parallel in our relationship with Jesus. I'll have faith when I can see the metrics, I can see progress, I can see movement. I'll have faith when it's neat and it's tidy and it's compact, it's predictable. I will have a spirituality when I can feel a sense of control. But when I can't see that, when I don't know what's happening next, when I can't see what Jesus has up his sleeve and coming around that corner, man, I don't know if I can believe in that. But Martha does. She doesn't know what's about to unfold in this moment. She doesn't have it all figured out. She doesn't have a sense of predictability and control. And faith means that we learn to trust in Jesus more than we learn to trust in anything else, even ourselves, even our answers. Can I truly trust in Jesus when I'm still learning about more of who he is? Martha has that moment, doesn't she? She's learning more about the complexity and the depth of Jesus' identity. Can I fully trust in Jesus even though I don't fully know who he is and all of who he is quite yet? Can I fully trust in Jesus when I don't comprehend the magnitude of the moment that I'm in right now? Can I fully trust in Jesus when I still have questions and emotions and confusion? I hope the answer is yes. And that's the whole point of this story, is learning that our faith is tested in the uncontrollable. I read on Twitter this week, I love this quote that I read. I don't know who said it, so I can't give the credit, but I have this intention. I can't take the credit for it, but I saw it on Twitter, and it said, "We can't overtrust God." It tweets so nicely. We can't overtrust God. There is no threshold in which you are overtrusting in the creator of the universe and the one true God, over-trusting in Jesus. That tweets so beautifully, it speaks so beautifully, it lives out very difficultly. That is not easy to put into practice because that means to trust in God and push it to the max of my threshold of faith means that I've got to trust in him more than I trust in myself, more than I trust in the answers, more than I trust in the visible, more than I trust in the predictable and the controllable. To learn to live in a way where I continue to trust in him means that I have a faith that is developed, a faith that is tested in the uncontrollable. And then the story is going to continue, and we see Jesus, he challenges Martha to roll the stone away from the grave, and Jesus is about to lead to this incredible moment. And we're going to pick back up with Brandon and Chloe, starting in verse 43 of chapter 11. Let's throw it back to them. Brandon and Chloe.
When he said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to him, Take off the grave clothes and let him go. Therefore many Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen Jesus did put their faith in him.
Well, thank you to Brandon and Chloe for reading that with us today, and it's good to see you guys. When we look at this passage, I think what we see is when our faith is tested in the uncontrollable, our faith becomes uncontainable. When our faith is tested in the uncontrollable, our faith becomes uncontainable. Lazarus is brought back to life. Mary and Martha get their brother back. That is an awesome, incredible moment, right? Woo! You would want to see that moment. But what's the biggest thing that happens is the faith that becomes uncontainable. People begin to believe in Jesus more because of that moment. It's not just that Mary and Martha got their brother back. It's that the people, the crowds of people that saw what happened, believed in Jesus. You see that in verse 45. Not only that, Jesus says that he hopes that the intent, and you can read this earlier in the chapter, verse 4 and verse 14, he says the original intent of the timing on all of this, man, he tells the disciples, he says, I hope that you will believe even more. I hope that others will believe him more. I hope that the glory of the Father gets magnified in this moment. So what is Jesus, the whole point of his timing and showing up when he does and the resurrection of Lazarus? Holy smokes, it is about an uncontainable faith. Mary and Martha's faith expands in that moment. You have to believe Lazarus' faith would expand in that moment, but the disciples are watching this. The crowds are watching this. Faith is no longer contained. It is no longer minimal. The whole point of this was Jesus wanted to ignite something in them. Because it is by faith that our lives are changed. It is by faith that we are saved. It is by faith that we have an eternity. That mattered way more to Jesus than just healing Lazarus. So he has this plan and he has it all come to fruition in this moment. So Jesus isn't late. Jesus isn't sleeping on the job. It's just that his plans are bigger and better than our plans ever could imagine. Think about it. Mary and Martha expected a healing, and yet Jesus shows up and has a resurrection. You and I, we have our plans for what we think Jesus should do. Jesus, it would be really nice if you fixed it this way. Maybe Jesus has something bigger, something better, something with a greater expanse, something that will lead to something way beyond what you can even comprehend in this moment. And not only that Jesus' plans get beyond our own plans in a way where it gets outside of our own bubble, our own perspective, our own view, right? Mary and Martha, they get their brother back. That's awesome. That's incredible. But the bigger win here is that more people believed in Jesus. More people put their faith in him. That's the bigger win than the Lazarus resurrecting from the grave. You saw the power, the authority, the magnitude of who Jesus is in this moment. Isn't that the bigger win in this? Absolutely. He is the resurrection and the life. And so could it be, right, that yes, we have our plans for what we want Jesus to do, and we're going to go through all these twists and turns, but maybe the twists and turns in our journey, maybe the timing that Jesus has for showing up in our journey is not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of somebody else. Somebody else in your household, somebody else in your community, somebody else in your world. So that others would look at what Jesus has done in your life and they would have faith, a faith that is uncontainable, a faith that cannot be just minimized to just you, but now that faith is spreading to the people around you. I think about in our world right now, I don't know what Jesus is doing. It's easy to look at our world and, man, we're in the midst of a global pandemic. We're in a financial crisis. We're seeing social injustice. We're seeing racism. We're seeing all of this just rise to the surface in this time. And isn't it easy for us to just sit back and like, Jesus, it's about time you showed up. You want to fix this? Like, how much longer do you want to wait? And there is uncertainty, and there can be doubt, and there can be questions that we don't have answers to. But Mary and Martha's story reminds us that even in those moments of uncertainty, even in these moments of having questions, we put our faith in Jesus, and maybe Jesus has something better than what you and I have planned. Maybe there's potential that Jesus wants to do something beyond our expectation, believing that Jesus could maybe show up through his church during this time, begin to show a tangible, life-changing love and movement of love in our communities through his church, through his body here on earth in a way that changes the world and brings an uncontainable faith to the world. He doesn't just have to come through and answer it how we thought, but maybe he wants to use us to be a conduit of that answer, to be a vessel of that hope, to be a vessel of those answers, to be a conduit of that kind of faith that can become uncontainable. Can we believe during this time that Jesus is active, Jesus is at work, Jesus is in control and has a plan in this? And let's continue to believe that he's going to come through, and we can truly trust him during this time. Let's pray. Jesus, right now we're in a season where there is a lot of confusion and a lot of questions. There's a lot of hurt, a lot of emotion, a lot of loss, a lot of anxiety. And that leads us to want to doubt. That leads us to want to be stressed out. That causes some of us to even want to give up on you because we don't see you showing up in the way that we thought. God, I pray that today your example with Mary and Martha would inspire us, that it would encourage us, that it would motivate us to trust in you more, to learn what it means to truly put our trust and our belief solely into you, and we begin to see a transformation. We begin to see resurrection. We begin to see life as you promised in our lives, in our homes, in our community, and across the globe, God. We need life. We need a resurrection. Praise you, God. Do your work, God. We trust you, and we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Church, we love you very much, and we're with you however we can be to support you during this time. Next week, we're starting a new series. Looking forward to that. And before we just forget everything we talked about, we'll throw it back to Cameron. She's got a couple of discussion questions for us to go a little bit deeper into this week's message. All right, let's throw it to Cameron.
Thanks for that message, Pastor Sean. As we conclude our message, we have a couple of discussion questions that you can download on our website. Can you share about a time it seemed like God showed up too late? Have you ever seen him do something better because of that? What would you say to someone who said that God had failed them? Hope you have a great week, Hub City Church. We love you.